Emily hurried home, her heart racing with excitement. She had just picked up photographs from the photo studio, snapshots from the beach vacation she and her husband, James, had taken together. Emily had been looking forward to this trip for an entire year, and as it turned out, it was worth the wait. The hotel where they stayed was absolutely stunning, and she couldn't resist capturing every moment on film. Though James wasn't thrilled about her constant picture-taking, grumbling, "Why do you need so many photos? A couple should be enough." Emily had a completely different view. She wanted to create a keepsake photo album, something they could look back on years later to relive those memories. "Wow, what's this all about?" she murmured thoughtfully as she sifted through the stack of photos. Something strange caught her eye. In nearly every picture, no matter where it was taken, the same tall male figure appeared in the background. Sometimes he stood half-turned from the camera, other times lurking in the shadows. There he was, picking fruit at a street market stall, while Emily photographed the pier, or hiding under the thatched roof of a small cafe's open veranda, while new friends snapped a picture of her and James. The oddest part? His face was never clearly visible. "It's like he knew he might be seen," Emily whispered to herself, shaking her head. At 32 years old, Emily found the situation deeply unsettling. A chill ran through her as she carefully reviewed the vacation photos again. "Oh my God, he's in almost every one," she gasped, her hands trembling as she quickly gathered the photos into a thick stack and stuffed them back into the envelope from the studio. The thought that someone might have been following them was too disturbing to entertain. Why? What would he want? No matter how hard she racked her brain, she couldn't recall anyone among their acquaintances who even remotely resembled this mysterious stranger. The next day at work, Emily couldn't shake the unease. She was a midwife at a maternity hospital, assisting mothers and their newborns through childbirth. Her job wasn't the most glamorous in the hospital, but it carried significant responsibility. It demanded constant focus and attention, but the vacation photo mystery made everything slip through her fingers. Lately, work had been tough enough. Emily adored children and genuinely loved helping her patients become mothers. But in nearly 5 years of marriage, she hadn't been blessed with a child of her own. The worst part? Medical tests showed both she and James were perfectly healthy, yet they remained childless. That day, unable to concentrate, Emily had to ask her supervisor to leave early. That evening, she showed James the photos. "Oh, come on, Emily," he said dismissively. "You're blowing this out of proportion, as usual." "No, James, look," she insisted, trying to make him see. "He's in almost every photo, and it's like he's always watching us. If it was just a coincidence, why would he hide his face?" For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of worry in James's eyes as he glanced at a couple of photos where the stranger appeared just a few feet away. How could they not have noticed him? But just as quickly, James's mood shifted to boredom. "Nah, you're overthinking it," he said with finality. "Could be another guest at the hotel. Tourists follow the same routes, you know. We were there, so was he. No big deal." Emily realized there was no convincing him. James thought she was being ridiculous and distracting him from work. "Sweetie, I've got a huge order at the factory," he said, exasperated. "My head's already full, and now you're going on about some imaginary stalker. Just drop it before you start getting paranoid." James was the head engineer at a factory, ensuring the smooth operation of high-tech equipment. He often stayed late or worked extra night shifts to check machinery and software. "What if I email the hotel?" Emily suggested. "If I send them these photos, maybe they can tell me if this guy was a guest." James groaned loudly and buried his head under a pillow. "This is unbearable," he snapped, sitting up abruptly. "Thanks for ruining my night's sleep." Grabbing a spare blanket, he shot her an irritated look and stormed off to the living room. "What did I do wrong?" Emily wondered, fighting back tears of frustration. I'm just trying to keep us safe. The next morning, James left without a word, skipping their usual morning coffee together. Guilt gnawed at Emily for keeping him up with her crazy theories, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the man in the photos had been deliberately tailing them. That day, Emily had a night shift, so she decided to visit her mother-in-law, Ellen, in the morning. They had spoken the day before, and Ellen was thrilled to hear the vacation photos were ready and eager to see them. Emily hoped Ellen might recognize the man in the pictures, but after carefully examining them, Ellen just shrugged. Sorry, Emily, I don't know him, she said. Then, squinting, she added, it could be one of James's old buddies from back in the day. Back in the day? Emily asked, confused. Ellen nodded. I raised James alone. His father died young, leaving us to fend for ourselves. She sighed heavily. I worked long hours, and James was often left to his own devices. He was a tough kid, lied a lot, even got mixed up with a bad crowd. Those boys nearly got him thrown in jail, but thankfully, it didn't come to that. Ellen explained that James and his friends were almost arrested for planning to rob an electronics warehouse. At the last moment, James escaped and later testified against his friends, vowing to his mother never to get involved in anything like that again. James never told me about this, Emily said, stunned. Of course not, Ellen replied with a wry smile. He was only 15, not exactly something to brag about. Maybe this guy in the photos is one of those old friends. Emily frowned, skeptical. James was just a kid back then, and he's changed so much since. Could someone really recognize him now? Still, she couldn't help wondering if this was the only secret James was keeping. Ellen shrugged. Maybe he mistook James for someone else. Or it's just a coincidence. Thanking Ellen and saying goodbye, Emily headed to work, disappointed she hadn't learned anything new. At the hospital, she faced an unpleasant surprise. The department head, Benjamin, called her into his office, claiming she'd made a mistake with a patient and needed a disciplinary talk. Emily was certain she'd done nothing wrong. She suspected Benjamin, who had recently been promoted and started making inappropriate advances, was using this as an excuse to get close to her. I've made it clear I'm not interested in any kind of relationship, Emily said firmly, repeating herself for the 100th time. But Benjamin locked the office door and leered at her with a smug grin. Come on, Emily, you can't avoid this forever, he said. We're both married, so what? People cheat every day. Not me, Emily shot back, staring him down. I'm loyal to my husband and always will be. Benjamin's smile faded, replaced by irritation. You think you're special, he sneered. Playing hard to get won't get you a promotion. I'll wait, but mark my words, I always get what I want. If you don't play nice, I'll make sure you regret it. Speechless with fear and anger, Emily demanded to be let out and fled to a break room, where she spent half an hour calming herself before returning to work. The humiliation was unbearable, and she had no one to confide in, fearing gossip would spread through the hospital. What did I do to deserve this? She whispered, covering her face. A few days later, a tragedy struck the hospital. A young woman died during a complicated delivery of triplets. Despite the surgeon, Michael, doing everything possible, he couldn't stop the severe bleeding. Emily, who assisted in the operation, was devastated. The police launched an investigation, naming Michael and Emily as key figures. Both were suspended indefinitely pending a review, and they had a sinking feeling this wouldn't end well. The deceased woman's husband, Nicholas, fueled the fire. Grief-stricken, he vowed to destroy Emily and Michael, taking his story to the press and appearing on talk shows to denounce their unprofessional actions. How am I supposed to go on without my Clara? He sobbed on live TV. These aren't doctors. They're monsters in white coats. They should be locked up. Emily felt a chill listening to his words. She sympathized with Nicholas, a single father with 3 newborns, but she and Michael had followed protocol to the letter. There was nothing more they could have done. To make matters worse, Benjamin cornered her in a hallway. Feeling the heat, "Emily," he taunted, "you're suspended for 3 weeks. What's next? How will you prove you didn't cause that woman's death?" Struggling to escape his grasp, Emily snapped, "Stop it. I'll clear my name, and so will Michael. We have nothing to hide." Benjamin smirked. "Play the proud hero if you want, but I can make this go away faster if you stop being so stubborn." His suggestive gaze made her feel sick. "Never," she spat. "You'll regret this," he warned, his voice dripping with confidence. Leaving the hospital, Emily noticed Nicholas sitting on a bench in the courtyard, swaying. At first, she thought he was ill, but then she saw the liquor bottle beside him. "Nicholas, why are you here like this?" she asked sternly. "Where are your kids?" He looked up with bleary eyes, mumbling, "They're fine. Neighbors watching them while I wait for your boss." Realizing he meant the chief physician, Emily urged him to go home to his children. "They need you," she said. "You can't let them down." Suddenly, Nicholas recognized her. "It's you," he slurred, lunging with the bottle but collapsing onto the grass. "Clara, my Clara," he sobbed. With difficulty, Emily convinced him to go home, though he muttered threats about suing them all. As she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Clara's death. Nicholas's drinking didn't seem like a spontaneous reaction to grief. She'd noticed his trembling hands and slurred speech even during TV interviews. Days later, Emily began to feel like the man from the photos was following her again. She thought it was paranoia at first, but she swore she saw him trailing her in a park and later near her home. When she told James, he was dismissive. "This is too much," he said, exasperated. "Focus on fixing your work mess instead of playing spy. The whole city's talking about you and that surgeon." He pointed to a TV report about the hospital scandal. "I'm serious, James," Emily pleaded. "It was him, and he might be watching us now." But James shook his head. "You can't even see his face in those photos. How do you know it's the same guy? Stop this nonsense." Feeling unsupported, Emily noticed James growing more distant. For the first time, she regretted taking so many photos during their vacation. To distract herself, she teamed up with Michael to check on Nicholas's triplets. Michael suspected Nicholas wasn't the grieving widower he portrayed. After talking to Clara's relatives, they learned she had a lifelong blood clotting disorder, a critical detail neither she nor Nicholas disclosed during her pregnancy. "If we'd known, we might have saved her," Michael said. "But why didn't our lab catch this?" Determined to investigate, they drove to Nicholas's rundown apartment. Michael spoke with neighbors, who revealed Nicholas was a volatile alcoholic who frequently yelled at Clara. "Poor Clara," Emily said, horrified. How did she carry triplets to term in that environment? A neighbor was temporarily caring for the babies, but the situation was dire. Emily and Michael confronted Nicholas, warning him that his drinking and neglect could cost him his parental rights. Faced with the threat of jail for past domestic abuse, Nicholas agreed to drop his lawsuit against the hospital and issue a public apology. But Emily doubted he could stay sober long enough to be a proper father. With the lawsuit resolved, Emily and Michael celebrated quietly at a cafe, growing closer as they talked. She began to see Michael's depth and kindness, qualities she hadn't noticed before. Meanwhile, the mysterious man continued to haunt her. She confided in Michael, who took her seriously and connected her with a friend, Alex, a former photographer turned private investigator. Alex uncovered shocking news. The man in the photos wasn't just some stranger. He was linked to Ellen. "Your mother-in-law met him at a diner recently," Alex said. "They were arguing, but I couldn't hear what about." Ellen left looking upset, like she'd heard bad news. He leaned in. This guy's careful, like he's trained in surveillance. Maybe even ex-law enforcement. Emily's heart sank. Why would Ellen lie about knowing him? Was James involved? Confronting Ellen, Emily showed her photos of the diner meeting. Ellen sighed heavily. James doesn't know, she said. This man, Constantine, is my older son from my first marriage. Emily was stunned. You had another son and never told anyone? Ellen explained that Constantine knew about James and had been following Emily to get to him. Years ago, James's testimony sent Constantine to prison for their teenage crime. Recently released, Constantine was seeking revenge. Ellen had met him to dissuade him, even offering to pay him off to leave James alone. Emily was reeling. Why didn't you go to the police? She asked. Ellen admitted she felt guilty for never reconciling her sons and hoped to resolve things herself. But Alex's later findings were even more shocking. The man wasn't Constantine. The real Constantine had died in prison a year ago. The imposter, a dangerous criminal named Victor, had stolen Constantine's identity to extort Ellen. Emily and Michael reported this to the police, and Ellen was devastated to learn her son was dead and she'd nearly been scammed. Amid these revelations, Emily discovered a hidden gift box in their sofa during a cleaning session, containing diamond snowflake earrings, her favorite design. Thinking it was a surprise for their 5th anniversary, she was heartbroken when James canceled their plans, claiming a work emergency. Suspicious, she visited his factory, only to learn he'd left hours earlier with a co-worker, Veronica. At a restaurant, Emily found them together, Veronica wearing the earrings. Furious, she dumped a pitcher of water on them and declared she was filing for divorce. Back at the hospital, Benjamin tried to exploit her vulnerability, cornering her in a break room. But Emily was done being a victim. She recorded his harassment and took it to the chief physician, who fired Benjamin on the spot. With her professional reputation restored and her divorce underway, Emily grew closer to Michael. They began dating, and together they checked on Nicholas's triplets, finding him still drunk and neglectful. Determined to save the children, they filed for Nicholas's parental rights to be revoked and, after a quick marriage, gained custody of the triplets. 6 months later, Emily and Michael celebrated their wedding with a joyful banquet, surrounded by friends and their new family, Timothy, Anna, and Elise. Despite the pain of her past, Emily had found love, purpose, and a family to call her own. Thank you for listening to the story until the end. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends and loved ones. It motivates us to keep working on new stories every day. Don't miss the next amazing story that's about to appear on your screen. We're very grateful to have you with us. See you soon.